Welcome to episode 3 of the Bohannan Team podcast, where we talk about all things real estate. And today we're talking about the successful buying process, start to finish. I could not be more excited about this episode because we have a lot of buyers and a lot of knowledge to drop on this subject. So I think we should just get it going and talk about we'll just do another scenario like last time. A buyer calls us and they want to buy a home, obviously, but they have no idea how to start. Those are my favorite because they listen to us. So anybody have some feedback on how they're going to get this guy going?
I always ask them if they're working with a lender first.
Of course.
Have you? But a lot of people don't think that. A lot of people don't think about that. They don't think, oh, maybe I should find out how I'm going to pay for this home. So that's always my first question.
Yeah, the reality check of what your payment's actually going to be too. Because I've done I just told you guys about wanting to buy a car. I did the loan calculator. It was completely off. And I was like, oh my God, this is how buyers probably feel. So it was a eye-opening experience. So I think, obviously talk to a lender. Mm-hmm. So what do you guys do in that situation when you want to tell a buyer? Rosio, what do you do when you know they need a lender?
So I give them a couple options, depending on their scenario and what they're needing, what kind of programs. Then I have them call them directly. That way they're able to choose who they like the best, and then let them know, hey, they all offer something different. You want to make sure you shop around. You guys have, the first 2 weeks after running your credit so that you can find the best rate and the best lender for you.
Yeah, that's a great thing because people think that once I run my credit, I have to stick with that person. That's not true. Obviously, you want to do it quickly so you don't, ruin your credit. So.
Exactly. And then another reminder is that you run your credit at first. Make sure you shop around within the first two weeks. Obviously, 1 week would be preferred. But then after that, they will run your credit again at the end of the transaction. So once you actually start buying a home or thinking of buying, don't make any big purchases on credit cards or any big purchase like at all, like car loans, anything that you want to do. Make sure you talk to the lender before you do it.
I was going to say, I can't lease a car 10 days before I close escrow.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I literally had this guy. He ended up being one of my least favorite clients ever. He was weird, number one, but we were going up to a new build. I showed him so many houses. I was selling his house. That went great, except for he rolls up in a brand new car at the new builds. And he was just like, he didn't get it. How many times can you tell somebody something? He was like, what? And I'm like, I don't know how to help you, sir. Like, you literally did the one thing you're not supposed to do.
Yes.
But I think he did it on purpose. I swear. Like, he wanted out buying a house.
Yes, because once they buy that car, now their debt to income is different. And then they have another payment. So that means they can afford less home.
Mm-hmm.
True. It's their own fault. So what do you do, Miss Elizabeth?
So for me, whenever somebody reaches out to me, I like to get to know them a little bit first. I want to know their story, just like you do with your sellers. I like to know why they want to buy a house. Mm-hmm. Is it because they don't want to rent anymore? Because they really need to get out from where they live? I just want to find out why. And then I can kind of figure out, okay, well, this type of client or this type of buyer will probably be a good match for this lender, because not every lender is the same. Mm-hmm. Every lender provides a different program, a different way to assist the clients. So depending on that, then I do like a little match. Okay. This lender and this buyer.
I was going to say, you're more matchmaker.
I love it. But it's so true because I do the same exact thing. Is I talk to them first. Why are you buying? Is this a second home? Are you a first-time home buyer? Mm-hmm. All of the things, because we want to gauge. And just because somebody's owned a home before does not mean they really understand, because we're still learning as realtors, let alone a client continually purchasing homes.
I also feel that whenever they reach out to us, and if we tell them right away about the lender, like, do you have a lender? They kind of get a little scared. Like, what do you mean a lender?
So I always ask them, how are you planning to make this purchase? Instead of saying, like, do you have a lender? So that way I know, awesome. Are you buying it cash, or how are you planning to finance? And that way you're not really saying, hey, you have a lender. Like, that way they know, oh, I see. Well, I was thinking this. And then that's how you kind of get there.
Kind of eliminates that shock factor a little bit. I think that's a really good way to approach it.
Have you spoken to one yet? In other words, you need one. So let's get that out of the way. And, surprisingly, especially through like COVID, I think people were treating things a little bit differently and they knew what they had to do to buy a home, and it was a lot more competitive. So a lot of people came to me already with a lender, but that is the biggest thing. And I wanted to focus on today is just because you have a lender does not mean it's the right lender for you. And your agent has worked with multiple lenders. So it's great to listen to their advice on who the right lender might be for you. We don't get $1 for referring a lender. I think people think that sometimes because they're like, oh, if I use your lender, are you getting like double commission? Like, no, we just want to make it a smooth process for you, 100%. So we don't get a referral for that. But I always give a couple options. I think we have the best lenders in the game on our team. And I always say, you know what, I think the perfect one for this is, this one's probably Gabby. Gabby could do a great job. Or if it's down payment assistance programs, who are we going to look at? Rosio, you've worked with ITIN numbers. So once you talk to them, that we're not going to send them to the wrong lender because that's frustrating to a buyer. And they get discouraged very easily. And sometimes a buyer might say no because they were discouraged that fast. They would just say, forget it. I'm just going to continue to rent.
And ITIN loans are very different than conventional loans. So they take a lot more work up front. I would always recommend making sure that the lender has already verified everything. They send it to underwriting way before you even put in the offer because you don't want anything coming up at the end. They're very tricky. They're nothing like conventional.
They're very tricky. And the other thing is when you buy a home, there are fees that you have to pay for out of pocket. You have to put in an earnest money deposit. That is a holding fee throughout the thing to know that you're serious and you're willing to remove those contingencies at the end. Your deposit becomes risk. We're not trying to let you lose that, but you will lose your appraisal fee and your home inspection fee and any other inspection fees that you paid for in advance. So we don't want to do that to let you know that you can't afford to buy this home.
Exactly.
It makes me sad because I'm like, I don't like to waste people's money, hope, time, all of those things.
One thing too, going back to like not buying a car, stuff like that, when it comes to earnest money deposit, stuff like that, just advise the buyer that if they have $20,000 sitting under their mattress, they can't deposit that into the bank and use that. The lender will want it seasoned.
And seasoning takes like about 3 months.
3 months.
Well, there's actually, it's funny because I just had a lender. That? Well, there's different programs now. So I think they're getting away from things because a lot of people are business owners. I think if you're a W-2 employee and you have like 20 grand coming in randomly, it's different. But I just had one where he is a business owner and he was making payments, but he does get cash. He does get things like that. So you have to write a letter of explanation. So don't get scared if you are a buyer and you're like, well, I do have cash. They probably won't recognize it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if you can track it and you're making consistent payments, it's not funny to a lender, but be prepared to have a letter of explanation written. And the right lender will help you write those because I made that lender do that for my client because he was trying to tell my client, well, you need a letter of explanation. And I'm like, well, and he's like, what is that? I don't know what that is.
It's easier if the lender asks them the questions, they type it up per what the buyer said. And
they know what the underwriter wants.
Exactly.
Yes, I know. But that was the thing on that last deal. I realized as a realtor, it is so important to know the lending process as well because I saved that deal. At the end of it, he's like, you can't remove contingencies. I'm like, well, why not? We're great. He goes, I just don't feel confident at this point. I'm like, you don't feel confident a week before closing? And I'm more worried about my buyer at this point because they think they're getting keys in a week. So I finally did a 3-way conversation with the buyer and lender to make sure that lender was held accountable. And while I was on the phone, I was giving them feedback of saying like, hey, did you do this? Did you get letter of explanation? Why don't you have it all come from a business account, not their personal account? And lender's like, I could do that.
Wow. And I'm assuming that the buyer came with that lender.
Of course they did, Rosio. Never worked with that guy in my life. But you know what? At the end of the day, that lender did come through. He listened to my advice and he got it done. So I could tell he's a young guy, but at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. This is about my buyer. It's not about me. It's not about them. This is about our client. So we have to be knowledgeable in all areas. So I think listening to your agent, having good lender advice is crucial. And not always, so I've actually met the best lenders because my buyers did come with their own lender. And I thought, wow, you've had that, Rosio, recently, right?
Oh, yes.
And you met a wonderful lender because of that. So I think it's always good. But let's go into the home buying process. I think this is the fun part. We get to talk to them. They got approved. We ask the questions now. What area do you want to live in? How many bedrooms? All of the things. And,
take them shopping.
Take them shopping. It is the most fun part. That's when they get excited. It becomes real. And then being realistic, which I think helps because, our buyers are sending us homes off Zillow, right? Do you guys have that often?
Yes. So I always like to remind them, say you're qualified for, 400,000. Let's not look at homes with that 400 $100,000, price point, because we want to make sure that we are looking at it a little bit under, because remember, rates change daily. I mean, they could go down, they can go up. And it's better not to go as high as you can, because then when they go up a little, you are still okay with the homes that you're looking at.
Absolutely. And during COVID, we knew that if you were only qualified to 400, you couldn't look at houses for 400 because they were writing them for 430 to get it
Mhm.
accepted. But
Exactly.
I think now the market's amazing. If you're a buyer that did not buy because you got discouraged during COVID, it is your time to shine.
Yeah.
And the payments aren't that much different, and you're not going 30 grand over anymore, and you're actually getting some costs covered. So Elizabeth, tell me about costs.
No, let me tell you.
Oh.
One of my buyers just got her offer accepted. 27.5 under asking price.
Oh,
27,000 under asking price.
wow. That's amazing. Did you get closing costs as well?
No, I did not.
But what was more important to her? Her payments?
Her payments.
Then perfect. So sometimes you have to negotiate that. Are costs up front because they don't have the money to come down, or do you want a lower payment because we got the price a little cheaper? So that's perfect. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love that.
So something, you know what? Let me get back to it. I kind of forgot.
Okay. Rosio, you sit over there and think about that. Okay, so that's a thing that I want to go over. Number one thing, buyers, you don't have to pay us. You do not have to pay our commission. A lot of buyers get nervous, like, well, what do I owe you? You don't. The seller is going to pay our commission. We're going to help you. We're going to work alongside with you. And we want to make sure this house closes because we get literally nothing until that happens. So we're going to try to do everything we can to make this happen for you.
I remembered. Okay, so sorry, guys.
I hope it's on topic.
So when is the right time to buy? I get that question all the time, right?
Yesterday.
Yes. And so what we tell our
Thank you,
clients,
Elizabeth.
the right time is when you're ready. As long as you
Yeah.
can afford that monthly payment, that's the right time. Yes, interests go up, interests go down. If you're buying it when the interests are high, just refinance as soon as they go down. Like, that's as simple as that. But the house pricing keeps going up and up. So the houses are not going to drop like everybody thinks they
Yeah.
are. Interest will keep going up and down and fluctuating. And as long as you're getting into a house that you can afford, don't worry about it. You're going to build that equity. When rates go down, you're just going to refinance.
100%. And I think the misnomer is, that's again, to Elizabeth's point, she made it last week, this week, we have to talk to the client. If they're looking to sell in the next 2 years, because they're only going to be here for 2 years, we need to guide them, be like, okay, well, this is your payment, blah, blah, blah. But one thing about the Antelope Valley, this is the best place to have a rental property because your mortgage is usually covered by the same amount as rent. It's a very rare that I think that can happen.
Yeah.
If not more. So you usually
Yeah.
get some more.
And especially because we live in an aerospace field and there's so many people coming in from Florida and all these different places. And a lot of them, they don't want to stay in the hotels and they actually prefer to rent a house. So I've had so many clients.
And they'll pay a whole year up front to have that
Exactly.
rental. There's actually a shortage. Obviously, we work in the same office as Rent Source. They need more homes to rent out because they rent out within seconds. So it is a great place to invest here. So back to our point, Rosio, about fees. I love you. No, I just wanted to point out, you don't have to pay an agent, but there are fees that you have to buy because people get scared. Like, so I have to have 3.5% plus this, plus that. It's like, no, listen to us first. Let us guide you because there's actually 0 down programs. There are first time home buying programs, which is 3.5% of the purchase price. But the one thing that buyers don't understand, there's also another fee attached, and that's 3% closing costs. And that's where it gets real because people just think to save that 3.5% for the down payment. But there are ways around it. So what would you do if I only had money for the down payment, Elizabeth, but I didn't know I needed closing costs? What would you do?
I think most first-time home buyers believe that they need 20% down to make a purchase. So I think educating the buyer and also having good communication with the lender. Obviously, every buyer is going to have a very specific and unique situation. So I think trying to find out between the lender and the buyer, what is the best plan for you? Everyone's going to be different. Every situation is going to be different, but figuring it out between the lender and the buyer. Obviously, we also can help, but by finding the right home and things like that with the right price. But there are ways we can make it
You can
happen.
try and find a home where the seller's willing to help pay the closing costs. That way you're not worried about where is this extra funds coming from.
Exactly. And to Elizabeth's point is lenders, when we talk to them and we get to know the buyer's financial situation, which is you have to have that conversation. Sometimes they have lender credits. They don't need as many closing costs as we thought they did. Different loans have different costs because we have one right now and she just got qualified. She only needs $10,000 for closing costs, which sounds really affordable actually, because
Yeah.
now I know in this market, we're getting a seller to cover all 10 grand of those fees. So she's only coming in with that minimum down payment she had to have.
That's nice.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Another thing too is tax prorations. Depending on the time of year, your closing costs will be higher or lower. That's the only thing I can think of
Yeah.
that would fluctuate your closing costs.
That's what the lender. So lender's
Yeah,
going to help us
having that
figure that out. And
communication.
that's why a good lender can help us do that. They're going to, I've actually had some bad experiences with lenders because they don't prorate correctly.
Mhm.
And then the buyer gets down at the end, they owed more at the closing table. And then they get in and their payment goes up after because they didn't prorate the taxes correctly. So
Yeah.
I've been very strict with my lenders, which they already know because they're great lenders. Nobody wants surprises at the end. Nobody wants a supplemental tax bill that's
Exactly.
astronomical
Yeah.
because it wasn't assessed correctly.
It's better for them to pad it. So basically, say it's a little bit more than it is. That way they're not having increase in the end instead of, oh, they got money back towards the end
Yeah.
because they gave
We
more.
want to give the most honest quote to our
Mhm.
clients
Yeah,
at all things.
exactly.
Because I tell my clients, I'm like, can you afford, $3,700 a month? That's great. I'm so excited. But you still have to buy toilet paper. You still have to put
Yeah.
gas in your car. You
Yeah.
have to buy dog food. There's so many things that are expensive in our life. So we try to, I'm never going to push somebody in the most expensive home that they cannot afford. So let's talk to the lender. Let's get this as cheap as possible for
Right.
you.
Also,
What-
when you own a home, the responsibilities of owning a home are a little bit different than renting because if anything breaks, now
It's
it's
on
your
you.
Your
responsibility
landlord's
to
not
fix.
coming to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to have that in mind. You need a
Mhm.
little extra money just in case anything breaks down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to touch on the supplemental tax bill too
Mhm.
that you mentioned. That is a buyer responsibility to pay. You can try and negotiate it in after closing and send it to your lender to have it added to your impound account, but your payment is going to really go up. For that, I had a client do that. That was
I
kind of
got a
scary.
supplemental tax bill because it's not always 100%, but mine
Mhm.
was $900.
Nice.
That's affordable.
Yeah.
I had one that did it. They went with Logix Bank, which Logix did a great job on the loan, but they were the cheapest payment out of all lenders. There's a
Mm.
reason for that.
Mhm.
If a lender's like exponentially cheaper on a payment, you're wondering like that doesn't seem right. Something's amiss, other than rates and all of those things. And it ended up being that they didn't have the taxes put in correctly,
Oh.
and they had a $3,600 surprise bill, which those closing costs that you got covered no longer look as sexy because now
Yep.
you're coming in with $3,600, and it's always around Christmas or something when you have to pay it. Like,
Can I tell you that client was Logix?
was it really?
It was Logix.
So big banks, and we should just touch on that real quick. Why we like to recommend our lenders. Do any of you recommend a big bank?
I actually have a buyer that's working with Logix. I should tell him.
Well, you know what you do? This is why we have these
cautious.
conversations and all of our listeners, because if you know this and you've heard this and you don't do your due diligence to research these things, it's now on your conscience. So
Mhm.
now that I know that, you can go with Logix because they do have great rates, but I'm going to make sure they assessed your taxes correctly.
And then remember,
Yeah.
one of our other lender partners will always help you, even if it's not with them that deal, because obviously they realize, sometimes you can't get them to change. And a
Mhm.
good lender will always help you, even if it's not their client.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's a great point. Our lenders they're not just money hungry people. These are people who actually care about the clients, because the reality is you might hate that bank after you worked with them, and when you go to refinance, you're going to call that person who was honest with you that
Yes.
entire time.
Gave you all the advice that you
Mhm.
needed.
So,
Mhm.
ladies, now that we have taken our client shopping, we know where we're trying to get closing costs. What happens next?
Well, what happens next? We have the lender, we have all that. I like to have that conversation again, like, okay, where do you want to live? Because neighborhood's everything. A lot of people have kids. School district is important.
Yeah.
And if that's their biggest focus is a safe neighborhood or all of those things, I go, okay, now what would you possibly want in a house? Because we know now your buying pool is a little shortened, probably because of price.
Mhm.
So we go through, some people want a move-in ready, upgraded home. Okay. Well, it might not be in that neighborhood you wanted. So we start going through, and I always do this because technology is fabulous. I go, can you send me a couple things that you found on Zillow that you like?
Mhm.
And I'll tell you if it's even in the area that you said you wanted to live in. And if it is, let's let's kind of talk about it. And I'm grateful for that now because people are able to shop online, tell us
Yeah.
kind of what they're looking for. And then I go the MLS, I do the criteria, and I usually always find my buyer the home. They don't usually find it themselves
Yeah.
because I listen and I'm very like, okay, I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah.
But I know the area way more than you do for the most part.
I always recommend that they drive around the area that they're wanting to buy in the night, in the day, like different days.
Mhm.
That way
Do the
they
same
kind of
thing.
see how it looks.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, yes, you went on a great day and there was nobody outside
Mhm.
and it was during school hours, like you never know. But if they drive around at night, now they see how many cars are parked there, or people on the streets, or kids running around, however it is, right? Some people might like that. They want friends for their kids or whatnot,
Mhm.
but it gives them a better idea of how that area is for them.
I
Absolutely.
actually had a buyer that was looking at Google Maps and looking at all the surrounding streets and houses because sometimes we love that house,
Mhm.
but your neighbor's house, it's messy, or the back, the neighbor in the back just doesn't look like it's a place where you would want to live. So to even avoid
Oh,
going
you mean
to
they're using like Google Earth to spy?
Yeah,
It's
not
genius.
spy,
No,
but
that's
like
why we have these tools because
Yeah.
I think it's great because it's so true. You might find the most gorgeous home with the upgrades and you get there and you pull up and the neighbor next door has weeds up to their windows and
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
don't know that usually till we get there,
till we
right?
get there.
But the only thing with Google Earth, it's not always updated. Like
Mm-mm.
within, I think my dad's old truck from like 2006 is still there.
Yes.
So there are different things, but it is great because it's again, these buyers are doing their own footwork, which I love
Mhm.
because this is your investment. I'm helping you, but really you're going to be one making the payment and living there. So
yeah.
I do the same thing as Rosio. I advise them to drive around all times of day, nighttime, stuff like that. Check out the neighborhood. But if it's in a school zone,
Go during
I
school
always tell
hours.
them go during school hours. Maybe when school's letting out is when you come home from work. You don't want to sit in traffic for 45 minutes to get in your driveway.
Mhm.
So I always advise them.
yeah,
of that
we're trying to
stuff
tell
too.
buyers have to do their own due diligence. And that's
Mhm.
one thing because buyers are always like, well, I could sue for that. It's like, well, actually, when you go to court and you're like, well, there was freeway noise. They never disclosed that. And the judge says, well, did you know your house is next to the freeway? You're not
Like,
going to
that's
get away with
given.
everything.
Right.
But I do think that that's really smart. I had a point too, and I want to say it. What am I thinking?
See, it
Do
happens.
you need a minute?
Oh my God, I'm pulling a Rosio right now.
Because we're trying to listen. It's hard to listen.
Oh, I
and
remember. No, because this is a commuter-friendly town. A lot of
Yeah.
people live here and commute. I actually
Mhm.
make them put to their job at different times of day and say
Mhm.
what would their commute be
That's
because
perfect.
Waze is amazing.
it's so awesome. There's again, technology has really helped us immensely. But I just had that because my client's like, well, I take a motorcycle to work every day. And I said, that's great. Are you this week? Because I don't know if anyone knows this. It kind of snowed on Elizabeth's car this morning.
Yeah.
So
It's cold out. Nobody's taking a
When I
motorcycle
took
today.
the kids to school, the kids are like, "It's snowing." Yes, it was lightly snowing. I was like, "Wow!" So we are getting
I'm
that
so
snow.
excited.
You
for the
had
snow.
buildup on your Jeep. We saw it melting off.
Well,
I
I
missed
know.
it. I
I just
don't know
want to
how I
send a
missed
gift.
it.
Do you want to build a snowman all week too,
Yeah.
guys? So, but yeah, those are the things. Like we want to like advise our clients. There's just so many aspects to it. But the home, when we go to look at homes with our buyers, it always makes me laugh. And I think I've already said this, but I will not live in a 2-story. I hate 2 stories. They always buy a 2-story.
Do you want to know why though?
Because they don't know until they get there.
But you know what's so great about a 2-story? When you have friends over, no one needs to see your rooms because everything is downstairs. And
Yeah.
so it kind of helps if you have kids,
And layout makes such a
entertaining.
difference because I think to myself, you might have been in 2 stories where you're like, yeah, that was a crappy layout. But there are
Mhm.
single story homes where they have a wall everywhere you turn. It's not that much better.
Yeah.
Granted, I always want a single story home. I don't want stairs, but
I have a 2-story and now I want a single story.
Yeah.
I mean, just going up and down the stairs.
mhm.
good exercise. Why
Yeah,
not?
I'm just getting a little old, so my knees are starting to hurt
So
a little.
old. It's true. It's
The
you don't
knees do
realize how many
bother.
things you forget until you have a 2-story home and you have to go up and down. The only thing, if I bought a
Leave everything
2-story,
on the
it has to
stairs.
have laundry upstairs for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to carry baskets up and down because
Yeah,
they
that's
just sit at the foot of your stairs
Just
for
toss
2
them
weeks.
over the rail.
Do
But
you
that's one of the
remember?
You have boys. They're just throwing things anyway.
Do you remember when we had to live in the rental house by the golf course a few years ago because our house flooded and it was being remodeled? Our laundry was downstairs. I'm not kidding you. We took laundry
Like a-
baskets and just dumped it over the loft downstairs. It was just raining.
No, I grew
clothes.
up in a
That's what you do.
2-story, and my
horrible.
mom's like, "You guys actually took more effort hopping over that basket than to carry it upstairs." And I'm like, "She's right," because we would literally what do you call it?
throw it over.
What is the jumping in Olympics?
Oh,
Pole vault.
Oh my
Pole vault.
gosh.
We would like pole vault
Jump over.
El salto del tigre.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that the minute.
You know that term?
Wait,
What's
all my
the term?
primas make fun of me. Yes. Okay.
El salto del tigre.
It sounds like tiger.
Yeah.
Tiger
The
jump.
tigers jump. I don't know.
Okay.
We call it pole vaulting.
That, it's just Elizabeth.
I love it.
Make that
I'm not
up.
even going to comment.
Hablamos español.
So,
Hablamos español.
yes. She does.
We do.
They do.
I was happy, Rosio, because nobody knows you speak Spanish. They just did their new listing video and you're in there speaking Spanish. I think people were like, oh.
Everyone thinks she's white.
And then it says I speak
They
Spanish
think I'm
on
the one who
everything.
speaks Spanish. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you
We
speak-"
need
I'm
to
like,
put it
"Gosh,
on your name
Rosio."
tag.
I should.
It makes me laugh, but it brought me so much joy. And I think people got really excited. They're like, oh, Rosio. Is she
She's
reading
learning
off a
Spanish.
teleprompter? She's learning
I know. They're probably, wow, her Spanish is so good.
Wow, she's really good. She thinks that Elizabeth is holding cue cards behind the camera.
Can I tell you, if I had to do a video where Elizabeth was holding cue cards in Spanish, I would not know what I was.
Because I feel like that would get a few views.
We got them coming.
Oh, good.
Okay. Anyways, you people. So now we found the home. They bought the 2-story they did not want.
Mhm.
Putting in that offer.
We're putting in that offer. What is the first thing you do?
So when I put in an offer for a client, I basically explain the process. Like I let them know, okay, the seller normally has 3 days to respond unless you give them an expiration date and time. If you don't, then they have 3 days. Once either they accept it or they send you a counter. If they send you a counter, you have to decide, do you accept it or you don't. If you do, as soon as you sign the counter or if they accepted your offer, they're going to have 3 days. The buyer's going to have 3 days to deposit their earnest money or good faith deposit. And a good faith deposit is basically just kind of like letting them know you're serious about this purchase. Escrow is going to call the buyer and let them know, hey, this is the routing number, this is the bank, things like that. And the earnest money is usually 1% of the purchase price.
And you're holding that because the good thing is that EMD is they cannot accept another offer now. So once you do that, saying the house is now worth 20 grand more because the market went up, that's too bad for the seller. They already agreed to yours and you're holding that with your funds in escrow.
Also, just to clarify to buyers, your deposit is going to go towards your down payment.
Yes,
Earnest
it's not an
money.
add-on fee. It's going towards your overall fee at the
Yes.
end.
So, an example, if your down payment is 10,000, and then say you gave 1,000 for EMD money, now you're at the end, you're only going to give another 9 towards the down.
So I think to your point, Rosio, our number one thing, and this is pretty much before we make an offer, would be we educate our buyers. This is what to expect because we're going to go see this home. I know you're going to love it. We saw the photos online and we're hoping it's like that. In person, you get there, they want to make an offer. They're already educated. So my first step that I do every time is and this is what blows my mind about some other agents. They don't call me. I call that listing agent all the time. And usually I ask them before I set up the appointment, hey, do you have any offers? My client loves it. No, we've already, they send it to me off Zillow. They already like it. I'm preemptively asking those things. And then I have that conversation with the listing agent and say, I knew they'd love it. My buyers are so serious. What can I do to make your seller happy? What are they looking for?
Do you also call your lender? Because I always make sure to call the lender before I write the offer. That way the lender goes over the payments with the buyer. That way they are certain that they are okay with what this payment is going to be.
Absolutely. But, for me, that's kind of ahead of the game. We will always do that because we've already had that discussion with the lender, if possible, and we've educated the buyer. So they're already pretty comfortable because, again, I don't like to push people into a payment they can't afford. So if we know that they're qualified to $450 and they're buying at $400, I feel really confident,
I like to tell my buyers, fall in love with your payment before you fall in love with the house. Simple.
If I love the payment, I'm not happy. Like for me, like that's like the car thing. I just went and looked. I'm like, I love that car, but I'm not stupid. I'm not paying that much money a month for that car. Same thing with buyers. But that's when you help them to be more realistic because some buyers send you homes and it's $500,000. They love it. And then they realize I don't like that payment. But when you go look at homes now at $400,000, it's a whole nother caliber of home. And then you're discouraged because you saw all the upgrades in that other home, the area, things like that. So I think it's huge, Rosio. Yes, you talk to that lender, but I want to do that kind of beforehand because I don't want to drive all around town with this buyer, get their hopes up, and it didn't work out. So
sometimes we always do that, but they kind of tend to forget, and they didn't pay attention, or the price that you're actually looking at is a little different. And remember, if you're looking at different areas, taxes make a difference on that payment. So even if you give them a estimate before putting in the offer, once you finally have that location, now you have to see what are taxes in the area. Is there a Miller Roos? Is there any other? And all that affects the payment. So that's why even if they already know the payment, I always make sure to double check, because
Yeah.
sometimes they forget or they didn't pay attention, things like that. And I'm always like
Absolutely.
100% certain.
So Mello-Roos tax is like a city ordinance tax that is added in certain areas. But I try to, when I'm doing the home buying, like, what do you call it?
Search?
No, like just the consultation with the buyer. I say, are you okay with Mello-Roos? Do you want HOA? Because most of the time they don't. And some people are like, no, I'm okay with that if it's a good area and it has benefits, because a lot of times they have parks or paseos, things like that are add-on or better schools. So, but those are the things. So I know if they don't want Mello-Roos, I'm not going to go show them homes that have that.
Mhm.
So this is, again, we're just trying to protect that buyer at all things, and then go back to the lender and be like, hey, I think this is the home. Here it is. Can you tell us if that payment was kind of correct of what we were assessing? So we made the offer. We talked to the agent. And for buyers at this point, if it's a home that's kind of sat on the market for a few days and they don't have an offer yet, I would advise try to ask for some closing costs. See what the seller's willing to do. The listing agent said, hey, maybe I can get you some closing costs. So we try to ask. But I also tell my client, don't be greedy. You need to know that somebody that same day may have made an appointment and they're going to come in and swoop that home from behind us. It's happened to me more times than not, because, my buyers didn't want to listen. They wanted to come in with a low ball offer, and they've missed out on some opportunities. So do you guys have any thing to add to that when you're trying to make an offer and trying to advise your clients?
I don't think so. I think a lot of the clients that I've worked with have really listened to what I had to say. And I'm always really good. I always have a conversation with the listing agent before I even submit the offer.
Yeah.
Before I even type it up, I have that.
But how much more
conversation.
smooth is your process?
So much better.
I get this is, and it's happened to me for years. COVID was the worst, because I think a lot of agents came in, they didn't know anything, and they were just trying to cash in on the market. I would get offers in my inbox. I didn't even know they sent it. Sometimes they would even go to my spam. So how would I even know unless I'm checking my spam?
Have you ever had one where they send you the contract link, just a signature at the bottom, or no signature, everything filled in, or certain?
Oh, I've had like the best. I love when they misspell my name, but it's not even letters that are in my name. I don't work at Remax. I'm at EXP. My license number's wrong. I'm on Sepulveda Boulevard. Like, I'm just like, what is happening? It's and I think to myself, if this is an example, would I have to work with you for the next 30 days? No dice. I am not working with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my seller, but that's to Emily's point. I really have a lot of the time I have great experiences, most of the time.
Yeah.
If they listen, because I have that rapport. My clients do trust me because we have these conversations up front. I'm not telling you what an EMD is the day you're writing an offer. Oh, by the way,
you have to give $10,000 escrow.
Can you
Hope
imagine?
you have it.
Well, that's when the stress factor sits in. And I think to myself, if a buyer's coming in with full confidence, I have buyers at the end, they go, that was the smoothest process. My friend bought a house. They cried the whole 30 days. And I'm like, man, that makes my heart hurt, because,
not when you hire us.
Nope.
Not when you hire us.
There you go.
We'll show you some of our reviews later.
Except for from Lost Virtue. Whoever you are, I'm going to find you. No, but it's so true. I think that just what we do up front, it always shows, because I just closed a deal, 21 days. Justin was the lender. It was so smooth. The day we got keys, everything was perfect. I talked to the listing agent twice. That's how much she didn't worry about me doing my job. We did the home inspection. We did say, because it was competitive, we would buy that house as is. So with that said, you can buy a house as is. You're still allowed to do a home inspection.
Right.
And I think buyers freak out because they go, well, what if something's wrong with it? No, you still get to do a home inspection.
How long do they have before they can decide?
It depends on the contract, but usually 17 days or 10, I think 10 days is for inspections for the most part that you're trying to do.
17 for physical, for finding out, any, anything regarding the home.
Oh, I always counter that.
If you want a competitive offer, you would lower it.
Why I tell my buyers to not do that is we wasted 17 days on a home because you wanted to still do investigations. You have 10 days to do your, why would you wait that long? So I'm like, we want the seller to do the termite right away. So it's our thing. If the seller's not willing to do it and you see that dry rot, you see those issues, order a termite. It's only $90. Like, I'd rather spend $90 to know that there was $4,000 worth of damage.
Yeah.
And so I do my inspections really quick. So usually if I get an offer accepted, I'm within 3 days doing a home inspection.
Yes.
That EMD is in, we know they're serious. I'm getting that inspection done. So that way we can either follow through or not. But most of the time the homes are good. We're doing our due diligence. But on the as is, there was things wrong with that house, but my client knew exactly what they were. He was totally okay with it. And he said, I'm still going to continue to buy this as is. And sometimes it's to my surprise, because sometimes I'm like, maybe I wouldn't want that for my home, but it's not our job to make those decisions for our clients either. We're just there to help educate them.
Yeah. Usually by the time I'm submitting the offer to the listing agent, I have my inspector on the phone, like, hey, I've submitted this offer. What's your availability look like in the event that it gets accepted?
Yeah.
I always
and then
wait
within
until,
48 hours, I'm
Very
at
proactive,
inspection.
Emily.
I wait until escrow's open. And as soon as it's open, then I schedule. Because sometimes you never know what happens.
Yeah.
No, and that's the earnest money deposit. You have 3 days to get within to get it in. And as a listing agent, I'm not going to inconvenience my seller to schedule all these appointments for the buyer hasn't even put in their earnest money deposit. Like, let's put this, I call it skin in the game. You need to put some skin in the game. Let's get going.
Yeah.
But the thing is too, I tell my clients, like, be very serious about this home, because a home inspection can range from $300 to $600, depending on what you want to do. If not more, sometimes depending on what you need to do. And an appraisal now is, I don't think they're any less than 600. Exactly. Yeah. They're not the cheapest. So, you're in, $1,400 possibly. That's a lot of money to walk away from.
And remember, the inspection, termite, appraisal, all those are extra costs that you're paying out of pocket. They cannot roll any of those fees into your loan.
Right.
Yeah. But we don't want to waste our clients' money. But at the end of the day, I'd rather lose $1,400 than buy a home that has a million issues.
Right.
So sometimes if that happens and we go to the next home, I try to help my buyer, knowing that first time was a bad go. We try to protect you. We're not just trying to have these fees happen to you. But I've actually had a girl walk away from a home. She was a nurse. She was single. Like, when things go wrong, she doesn't know how to handyman. She doesn't know how to fix these things. So for me, when I was doing that home inspection, I'm like, I want to make sure this home is solid for her as much as possible. And our home inspector said, hey, they redid the shower. They never fixed the plumbing behind. And when I turn it on, I hear it's almost like, sounds like water leaking. I looked at her and I'm like, I know the seller's not going to do it. They already did shoddy work. They tried to cover it up, which means what else have they tried to cover up?
Lipstick on a pig.
Every time. And you know what? Somebody had bought that same house after, and they sold it 2 years after. So I thought they knew there was something wrong with it. But I felt so good not letting that girl buy that home. And on the next one, I was like, I'm going to pay for her home inspection because, but I mean, that's what we have to do. So, but now we're going to talk about contingency removals, because we did that. The appraisals in, everything came in at value. Home inspections are done. So when we remove the contingencies, what does that mean?
That means that you will lose your deposit.
No, that means that your buyer is confident that they're going to be closing on the property, and they're willing to relinquish their deposit in the event that they cancel.
Thank you, Emily, for saving Elizabeth on that. No, but it is true, because if you want to play games at the end and you've done all those things, and I think of that more on the listing side, all of a sudden the buyer's just not answering their phone, not doing the things, we are going to take your deposit. So don't, that's not a light thing.
As a reminder, though, if, say, the seller, the listing agent, they cancel for any reason, you are entitled to that amount back, all of it back, because it was
the seller.
It was the seller's fault, not yours. If you just decided after you've removed everything, hey, I don't want it because you know what, I realize I don't want to fix that roof later. Now you're liable for that cost because of the fact that you had said you were okay with it, and now you're
And think about it. You took this seller's home off the market for the last 19 days because nobody ever really gives me my paperwork at days.
Right.
And now that they lost a lot of opportunities to sell their home. I do think in some other states are really strict. California protects the buyer a lot, which is frustrating for sellers. But if you're a buyer and you just think you could cancel at any moment, you're a jerk, because that seller's now packing up their home. They think they're moving. You can agree. Are you agreeing with me?
But as a
Somebody cancel on me. It was so stupid.
No, it actually makes me mad because I think about both sides of the transaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I have such good experiences. Why I'm buying and listing side, they accept our offers because we care about the other person.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder though, so even if say they did lose their deposit as a buyer, you lost your deposit because you had to cancel or anything happened. If the listing agent, seller, all of them, they're able to sell the house for a higher price than whatever you were offering, you're actually entitled to that back because they're only
I was gonna
entitled
say that
to
too.
it if they lost because of you. So say they now put it back on the market, now they actually sold for like 20,000 less than you were buying, then they are 100% entitled to that money. But if they were able to sell it for even more, then you can take it to court and then get that funds back. But obviously, why go through all of that process?
Another thing too, when it comes to a cancellation, your seller can say you lifted your contingencies and sign a cancellation saying that they get the money back. But if the buyer doesn't agree, that money sits in limbo until it's mutually
Yeah, I think
agreed
people
upon.
think it's so easy and to sue in California and blah blah blah. It's a lot, and that's why we try to do our due diligence up front. I've had some people where you didn't tell me that the blinds were broken and you didn't tell me this, and
I know who you're talking about.
no, and it's annoying. But I think to myself, when I showed you that home, it was fully furnished. There's a couch, there's a coffee table, there was a rug down. I'm not allowed to move their furniture. I'm not allowed to do those things. That's why we're trying to investigate as much as possible. But when people move things out of that home, we might know there was a broken electrical outlet. We
And
don't
this-
know those things.
And this is when we tell our buyers, we explain to our buyers, you practically have 3 chances to cancel and still keep your deposit.
Mhm.
So,
Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Make sure that if you don't want a broken blind, then you check every blind. Like you are entitled to do that. Us as realtors, we can't, do certain things for you. You have to do your own job as well.
1,000,000%. If you're going to blame your agent for everything that you went on into that house of blinders on, you're signing disclosures that say do your own investigations. Seller advisories. Seller, you have to disclose things too. Like this is, but we're helping facilitate this between the buyer and the seller. We are helping educate our client, but at the end of the day, it is their decision to buy. But I have great experiences with my clients. Other than some people get mad about cosmetic things, we have no control over
And
that.
remember, as realtors, we're looking out for the big, big things, not if a blind was broken.
But what's the one thing that we are going to try to always negotiate into the deal? A home protection plan.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
tell my clients, you know what the reality is? This air conditioning could break 2 days after you buy that home. And that's why we get you a home protection fee for the first year or warranty. So that way, you can call that company. It's what is it now? An $85?
85 or 95, something
there's
like
different plans.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
going to cover that air conditioning unit. So we do try to
Repair.
protect you in the event. Of course, things are going to break, and you, like Elizabeth said, you don't get to call your landlord anymore. You are the homeowner. So we're going to try to protect you. You always contact us after the sale. I talk to my clients all the time, like, hey, Megan, my dishwasher stopped working. I said, no big deal. Sorry to hear that. Call this number and they get a brand new dishwasher. So they're always really happy. And at that end of the 1 year, they can decide to extend
So
that.
side note about that, I actually saw this little hack where you have a home protection plan, right? And you have an old dishwasher or whatever. You go buy like one off Facebook for $50. It doesn't work. And then they call their home insurance, the home warranty plan. And then they tell them, hey, my dishwasher stopped working. And now they're going to replace that model. So
you're giving buyers?
the tip,
No.
I think that means you're a
I-
bad person, right?
I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, I
Can
can't.
I tell you, some home warranty companies will come back and ask for copies of your home inspection and they'll look at the photo.
I agree with Emily. Do not ever advise your client that they will fix it because I've been in situations that go, that was pre-existing. It's
Exactly.
obvious.
Mhm.
I've done, and this is why home inspections are so vital. If it's on its last leg, do not tell your client it will be covered. Because if the home warranty company comes out and it's a rust bucket with the 2 buttons missing,
Yeah.
it's not because it just broke. It's
Yeah.
because it was a problem and they put a Band-Aid on it till that like 30-day close.
Mhm.
So
Be
again,
There's
careful.
buyers, be careful of the TikTok hacks you see
Yes.
because they're not always good hacks.
Always
I
talk
think
to
that's
your
your point. Yeah.
Yes, I'm like always
and
talk
don't listen to your
agent.
shyster agent. If you have a shyster agent, do not listen to them.
Just
What's
call
a
us.
shyster agent?
They are.
Shady.
Do you know my
Oh.
favorite is I talked. My home inspectors are like my best friends. I love them to death because
Tim and Eric.
Well, I've actually had quite a few, but Tim and Eric are so funny. But we talk about like I would say what agents, that, no names, but like what happens at these things, he's like making it blow your mind. I'll be standing there telling him like, hey, this roof is missing a lot of tiles. There's, what is the thing underneath the paper underneath?
Yeah.
And they're like, no big deal. It's a $10 fix at Home Depot. The agent always behind them. Oh, it's a $10 fix.
Because they don't want to scare their buyers.
They don't want to lose the deal. And I think to myself, you'll know a shyster agent up front. They didn't educate you. They overinflated. They're telling you to go with a big bank.
They just want
Ethan, are you telling them a $10 fix at Home Depot?
Absolutely not.
No, I wasn't looking at him. I was just thinking,
$27.
I'm mind blown that they're like, oh, all the paper, the tar, everything underneath your shingles are missing. It's $10.
Just put it back.
But that's where, and it's sad because as a buyer, if I go to buy a car, I want to trust that guy that he's telling me that's how the car operates or what does it cost for new brakes. If he's like, new brakes are $37, I don't buy new brakes all the time. I don't know. I mean, I hope that I've done my due diligence.
Way more than $37.
But my point is that people are willing to listen to their agent. So it's so important to hire a good realtor.
Yeah.
Because people, even sellers, they worry about like, well, I have to pay your commission. And I'm like, I'm actually going to negotiate and make you more money by the end of this. That I've paid for my own commission. You're acting like it's a debit. No, it's not a debit. I'm actually paying for it because I negotiated all these things for you.
Yeah. Before we get on to the next topic, I want to touch on one thing for contingency removal. Your deposit is not, the seller's not able to keep the deposit if they don't lift loan contingencies also. They have to lift all contingencies.
But it would only be the EMD because the EMD is, you said deposit. Deposit is not going to be given until the end of the transaction. So they won't keep their earnest money.
Yeah, that's the earnest money deposit. That's the deposit. So if you say I'm lifting all inspection contingencies, all of that, but I'm not lifting loan contingencies because I don't have clear to close, and then they cancel.
Yeah.
You don't get your deposit.
I started daydreaming for like 2 seconds.
I believe
you
you.
were talking.
It's okay. Earlier I was thinking about what soup I wanted at lunch.
I'm like,
I just feel like contingencies is a very...
It's a sticky situation.
Yes.
it is sticky, but I can gladly say in 10 years, I've only had a client on my buyer side lose it twice. They decided the last minute they weren't going to take that job. They knew that happened. And the other one would just decide, I don't even remember what happened. But I felt at that time they deserved to lose their deposit. You know what I mean? So now that we're doing that, we're going to get to the final walkthrough at the end. We've done everything.
How many days before?
3 to 5 days.
I'm so sorry. Actually, can we go back to the inspection? So we do the inspection. Let's say a bunch of things come up during the inspection. Now we have a chance to go back and renegotiate.
You're right. Okay, why I'm stressed out right now? We're 45 minutes into this podcast. I feel like this needs to be a 2-episoder because there are so many things. Because this is the stickiest part. Because we're
getting feedback on that.
Is it too long?
No, we have
keep
make
going.
it longer.
Okay, because I agree with Elizabeth. I don't want to stop this because this is vital. Because I was listening to a podcast today and I thought, man, this girl is so smart. She's a top agent. She's done millions and millions in sales.
just like you.
She sounds like I was listening to my own podcast this morning. No, but she was saying it's so important to represent just as many buyers as it is listings. And it's so true because some agents are like, well, I'm now just a listing agent. You forget what it's like to be in the buyer's shoes. Right. And
it makes you a better listing agent.
It makes you a better listing agent, but it makes you a better buyer's agent too, because you know that seller is like already when you're doing the listing appointment, I'm not fixing a damn thing in this house or whatever the case is. But yes, there are some agents that literally staple the whole request for repairs and say, we want this all fixed. No, because we educated our buyers up front. If it's something big, my biggest thing when a home inspector goes in is plumbing, roof, electrical, water heater, all the big ticket items that are expensive. And if it's cosmetic, I try to tell them like, let's be fair to the seller.
Remember, the seller could also say, no, we're not fixing it. And then you're at risk of losing, that's home for minor things.
Absolutely. And if you're not advising them, if you're going to ask for all these things, be prepared. They might get pissed off and send you a cancellation, and they are allowed to do that.
But we can also ask for repairs and they can say, well, we want to repair this, but not this.
That's why it's called a request for repair, not a demand for repair. It's a request.
They're not even obligated to respond in reality. They could just totally dismiss anything that you ask.
No, because I'll hound you until you respond to
No,
me.
yes, of
I'll
course. but-
accidentally be walking Oliver in your neighborhood, be like, "Hey, did you get my request for repairs?" No, but
2 blocks away.
A random neighborhood. Oliver can get me out of a lot of
I know, he's
things I
too
do
cute.
wrong. But yeah, no, they don't have to, like you said. But usually, like that's another thing. We're talking to the agent. I call the agent and say, "Hey, we did the home inspection. Thank you for allowing us to do that. I'm really bummed to find out the AC is not blowing air. We're not sure why. The home inspector tried it. Does the seller aware of that?" Like we try to play stupid a little bit in hopes that they'll tell us, because sometimes sellers don't know, if it's under a sink, how many times do you look under your sinks at home? You don't. So they're not always aware of something that's broken.
Well,
in
I
their
do
home.
because I have everything under.
I was gonna say every day.
Out.
I guess
I
it's if
look
you're Hispanic.
far enough for a trash bag,
Yes.
and that's about it.
I blindly reach for my trash bags. It's like a game.
Yeah,
Where's that?
They have cleaning ladies. We don't.
Oh,
you
stop.
do
No, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
do
sorry. My
not.
teenager is my cleaning lady.
I do not have a cleaning lady.
Actually, my cleaning lady's at my house right now, and I bought the new Dyson vacuum, and she's so
love
excited.
it.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now I told her I vacuumed my whole house this morning just because it's fun with the Dyson.
And you look cute.
So she's probably like, "This is the cleanest I've ever seen."
And then
Megan's
you can
house."
squat while you like
I
vacuum. So it's
Can I tell you how embarrassed I was? My arm got tired.
Okay, you
remember
can
last-
tell you don't have to clean very often because man, mopping and sweeping these houses with these
It's
kids.
a full body workout.
It is.
So
I
it's
can't
humble.
do it. That's why.
Anyways, no, this is why we go 45 minutes over. But yeah, so the request for repairs is probably my least favorite part of any transaction in a home. I don't know about anybody else, but
Right. I'm always
it is
nervous.
the getting an offer accepted is nerve-wracking. Request for repairs is the most dreaded because
Mhm.
everybody tells you what you want to hear in the beginning, and request for repairs separates who that buyer truly is and who that seller really is. But I think if you have those conversations up front and you talk to your client, you pre-educate them and say, "This is what you're allowed to ask for. This is what I advise for you to do." And you tell the listing agent, like, "My client's not picky. We're prepared to look at just the big ticket items." And you do that, that listing agent's more prepared to want to help you. But if you say, "We're not picky, we're not going to ask for anything," and now you're asking for a light bulb to be switched out and
Yeah.
blah, 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 that agent's pissed now and you're less likely to get help. So listen to your agent on that.
Yeah. One thing I always do is I will talk to the buyer and say, "Hey, this is what's called out. Do you want to just fix it and ask for credit? Or do you want the seller to fix it?"
That's a great point. So sellers don't have to fix it, and you can ask for a credit instead. So if we know it's $2,500 to fix that, we can try to ask for $3,300 in hopes they give us $2,500. That's kind of what I do. Like, no, they might negotiate unless you already talk to listing agents. Say, "Hey, they'll do $2,500. Cool, write it up. Let's not play games." But I always do that. I tell my client, if you've seen that they patched holes horribly, they don't know how to fix things, they've been doing their own like duct tape work for years, do not ask for them to fix it. Ask for a credit, because if they fix it, you might not like it. So
That's a great point.
yeah, no, I've always done that. But if that person's like OCD and knows how to do things and hires contractors, make them do it so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. I had our house that we sold 2 years ago. We had just remodeled the kitchen, and the agent came back and asked for a request for repair for $15,000 because they didn't like the countertops we put on the counters.
But that's my point, is that pisses me off because at the beginning, "Oh, we love it. Best house ever." And that's when I'm just like, you know what? We have 3 backup offers. We're not playing games with this person anymore because they've now falsified who they are to us.
Yeah.
And you made this
Just to get the
you
offer
asked
accepted.
about selling memories last episode. When somebody becomes nitpicky about a house that you raised your kids in and all of that, it does upset people, because now you're telling me that my house is a junk pile and, little Timmy loved it.
I mean, you saw all the
Little
work we did to that house before we sold it. And she put on her Avid that the entire house had to be gutted, that it was garbage.
Wow.
And I'm like,
I just had that happen
oh my
on
God.
40th. The agent wrote dusty air conditioning unit. I'm like, really?
But that house is so cute, and
That's
like,
my point. It pissed me off. 'cause I
Maybe it
thought-
was dusty.
yeah, but that's not worth trying to
Isn't the
fight
air
over.
conditioning
Just
unit
get a
outside?
service
The
The
done.
seller's going to read this and they do get insulted. And my seller was so insulted. She's like, "We're really clean." I'm like, "I didn't even notice you had dust on your AC." But you have to remind them, like, this person's coming in with a different set of eyes than we are. We have to just take our emotions out of this process. As hard as that
Yeah.
is, because it's a very emotional process, but it is still sales. At the end of the day, it's between buyer and seller and the goal of getting this house sold.
Yeah.
So
We are here to facilitate the process, to guide you, to help you. But
Yes,
we're not
our
here
job-
to make the decision.
Our job
for
is
you.
not
No,
to give
right.
them decisions. Exactly. We basically just give them their options. These are scenarios. You can do what you feel is best, but we can never tell them what to do.
and
Give 'em all the
hiring us
tools.
as experienced agents, each of us, it's nice because we've had so many scenarios in the past that we can tell our clients, I've had this happen
Mhm.
numerous times. I can't say that'll happen for you, but I know this is probably the way it's going to go.
Right.
And you have to call people's bluff a lot. And that's where the negotiation skills come in, because I have some buyers that are like, "Wow," or as a listing agent, the buyers ask for a million things. And I go, no, we're not going to do it because we know it's petty. And they're like, well, we'll cancel. I go, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. They don't cancel. They're just trying to, just
Put
intimidate
some
us.
pressure.
Yeah. But then I tell my client, maybe they're not. Like, this is Russian
This
roulette
is what
a
you
little.
can risk. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you always tell them, well, this is our options, but remember, you have to be ready in case this happens.
Right.
But we also know, I say, well, based off inventory, West Side, where are they going to find this house again?
Right.
And I kind of had to do that on Kaleshi, this last buyer. They were big nitpicky. And I thought, you're getting the best deal on the market. This home is priced
Yeah.
to sell. We upfront told you what was wrong with it. And I love seller disclosures because my clients were so honest. They said everything that was wrong with that house and everything was correct except for the dishwasher because it broke during escrow. We cannot control that.
Yeah.
Those are things that we have to prepare for. So I told my client, we're going to get them a new dishwasher because it's the right thing to do, even though we said as is.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't say it was broken and then it breaks, I feel like it's the right thing to
Yeah.
do. But
Yeah.
But not all agents are like that.
you know what is so sweet? That buyer's agent sent me a Starbucks gift card and said I was the best agent she's ever worked with.
That's sweet.
It was so sweet, but I thought to myself, I just was kind to her, but her buyer had a little bit of buyer anxiety.
Mm.
So
So
I
that totally helped her.
Well, I told her this because I've done this for years and I've had the anxious buyers and I've been on both sides. I told her, I said, why don't you call me when you're with your buyer? Put me on speaker and talk to me as if I don't already know these things so I can explain to him from the seller's side. And she did that, hung up, text me, and she goes, the buyer's good to go.
That is so nice of
Oh.
you because not all agents will take the time to do that.
No, exactly. And I've actually had it where an agent sends me a really crappy offer on my home and they said, please don't hate me, Megan. My client won't listen. I said, hey, send me that offer. I'm going to text you back why I won't accept it and screenshot that and send it to your clients.
Yes.
Because we're trying to
Just
help.
be honest. We're all trying to make this deal work. I mean, we understand
Yes.
we're doing what our
We
client
need to
wants.
set reality with a lot of people. And it
Mhm.
goes on both sides. It's not
Yeah.
just buyers, it's sellers, because we have those unrealistic sellers that think their home's worth way more than it is too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're working with other agents is vital.
Mhm.
We're not always afforded that luxury because not all agents are great. But I think if we continue to be who we are and represent our clients well, it pays dividends time and time again.
Yes.
And that's why we keep getting referrals. So
That's why everybody loves us.
Yep.
I mean, I love us. So I really do.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my favorite group
The
on
best.
planet Earth. So now we're getting through, I'm just going to push through this because I feel like we can make like 10 episodes of buying processes because there's so many different scenarios, and we'll probably just do one based on lending one day because of how important that is. Probably bring a lender on just so we
Yeah.
can pick their brains. But we do a final walkthrough like 3 to 5 days before closing. Make sure, because, people move out pianos, people are moving things. They could put big, huge gashes in the wall. They may have taken the microwave when we say, oh, sorry, the microwave's a fixture. We're trying to make sure everything's kosher. A lot of times the final walkthrough it's a nerve-wracking thing because sellers usually get a couple days after the close of escrow. So we don't know what they're going to do until that bitter end. But this is pretty much all in good faith. We're hoping that they've held up their end of the bargain. We have, and you're hoping that home is in
So what do
perfect
you
condition.
do if you go in there and it's a disaster?
Oh, you just actually had one of those.
I did
Ooh.
have that. There's, this is where you hope the other agent's cooperative, because this is when lawsuits can happen. My uncle actually bought a house, 20 plus years ago. The seller thought he asked for too much during the home price. It was a very different market. So they took all the cabinets out of the kitchen. So when he moved in, there was no cabinets. Well, either you have to go pay for a costly lawsuit or you're doing something, but I would go after, like, this is why we carry E&O insurance too.
Yeah.
We're there to protect our buyers. But if I know something's a little fishy, and that's what I did, to your point on the one you're talking about. I had one where the seller was like hoarder to the max, disgusting, did not honor any of our appointments, all of that. I'm doing 2 final walkthroughs. I'm not going to surrender some of the fees. So I held $1,500 in escrow until they vacated the property, because I didn't trust that she would not sabotage something. Thank God she didn't, but we were able to hold some of the seller proceeds if we're going to close.
How did you do that?
Yes, that was my question.
Some escrow offices, not all of them will do that, but there are ways. So a broker can hold a check, even though like it's kind of fishy in that world. But some escrows will hold proceeds. So saying it's tenant occupied, and those tenants were like, what if they don't leave? Like, this is scary. We deal with a lot of things that are, up in the air. We pray a lot in real estate. But we're going to hold funds. So saying we closed on the 17th, they have till the 20th to move out because they asked for 3 extra days. Or even if not, we're going to hold some of the seller proceeds in escrow. So it's not like we're holding it. So it's safe to make sure the property's in good standing condition when the buyer moves in.
All you would do is just draft an addendum, make sure everybody's in agreement. You can say holding $5,000, holding 10%, holding whatever you guys feel. And that's the same thing you would do if you had to do any kind of a rent back.
But the seller will have to sign it and agree to that?
Absolutely. But
what if they don't want to sign that?
Then we're going to want them to move out pretty much beforehand, depending on the situation. But because I've had people say, oh, well, we're scared your sellers won't move out. Where I'm like, well, first of all, my sellers are moving out. They're contingent. So there are the agents that try to micromanage the deal. And I say, you got to trust the process. There's a lot of just have to trust the process in this.
Do you do that when you have contingent ones moving out of state? Personally?
Like, what do you mean?
Like if they're moving out of state.
Sorry, I have allergies if you can.
They have a couple days after or whatnot. What if they're staying, 20 days after closing? Would you do that? Or
there's a lot of case scenarios. So the thing we touched on last episode was contingencies. All parties are agreeing to that. The scariest part is it is concurrent. Concurrent means one has to close for the next. It's a domino effect for like layman terms. So what's scary is, what if we close on Susan Street and they're closing the next day on Timothy Street, but Timothy Street can't close now. They need 2 more weeks. It's very scary. This is why we tell people
communication is key.
Communication is key, but this is where an experienced agent comes in, because there was probably some indication that Timothy house was not closing because they didn't sign loan docs yet. Something didn't happen. If we know that other house has not done those things, I'm not removing my client's deposit. I'm not having them get their U-Haul truck.
Right.
Communication is key. And that's why when the other agent is not doing their job, we have to go all out and contact the broker. I've had to work with the seller exclusively on the other side because their agent's not doing their job. But we are not going to try to have people be homeless and live in hotels for weeks.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, we can only control so much.
Right.
My crystal ball is constantly broken on what's going to happen.
We should have talked about how to pick the right agent for you.
That's going to be the next one.
Okay.
I'm the right agent for you, Elizabeth. It's a very short episode. I seriously I just had to sneeze for 8 minutes. How does sneezing sound in a microphone?
Just mute it.
I'm a hot mess. Curly
You're
hair,
good.
sneezing. Okay. Can I borrow your nose strippy thing?
Absolutely. I'll go get one from the car.
Yeah.
You keep them in your car.
Of course.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the reality of real
I've
estate.
never used
We're
one.
not always in heels,
lucky.
looking all perfect.
Oh, no. And on days where it says it could possibly snow and I have this much allergies, you're lucky that this is happening right now.
I was explaining to my uncle yesterday that I have 2 different personalities. I have my home personality and I have my work personality.
I think you have 8 personalities.
I do.
Wait.
But yesterday,
we name all 8 of your personalities.
yesterday, Ethan's filming me and I have my hands in my pocket and I'm walking and I look like I have boots and spurs
I saw
on
that.
the way that I'm walking.
I know, it actually looked like you're walking in a reverse hill.
No.
And you're like popping. It's like a reverse twerk. She did like a reverse
So
twerk.
No, she
bad.
busted a Jim Carrey. She
I
was
did
like,
them finger
Oh.
gun.
Do you get nervous hands?
Yes.
There's a thing called like nervous hands in videos. And my friend
That's
Adam
how I
told me
am.
about it when I first started because I'm like, welcome to this house with
I
4
did finger
bedrooms.
guns a lot.
Oh.
I did that with the Spanish one. I was like,
You're like, I've never even done a thumbs up, but all of a sudden today,
I know, out of nowhere, she's like, I have a thumb.
do you know, I have a nervous wink sometimes. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't, oh my God, how creepy am I?
I thought you would just be like,
no, I'm a creepy.
I thought you just really liked me. It's okay.
like, why is Megan always like,
No, I'm like, why is that husband texting? No, just kidding. Bad joke, Megan. She was anyway, so we
Not
close.
soon
Congratulations to our buyers. Have a nice life. No, I'm just kidding.
One thing
there's
to
so many things I wanted to talk about. This is too long.
touching on your thing though, Rosio, a lot of the times the seller should know ahead of time that they're going to need 20 days after closing. And a lot of things that I'll do is I'll say, we'll give you 7 days, but after that 7th day, we're going to start charging you a per diem.
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of a
There's
thing.
different rent backs, all the
Yeah.
different things you can negotiate up front. But sometimes people don't need to move in right away, so they
Yeah,
will take a rent
It's
back.
easy.
I hope I'm not on camera because my nose.
Do you need a tissue?
what if we put that here? No. Our Bohannan little thing
No, I
here.
think
It's better back there.
Yeah.
I have tissues in my
Always marketing. I
purse,
love it.
Lindsay.
By the way, we should tell the people to vote for us.
Oh yeah, vote for us for
and you're
AV's
still
best.
possibly listening this far in. You're our number one fan, and you need to go to AV's Press.
AV's
Best?
Press.
AV Press. Best.
AV Press, and then if you hit the little menu button, it's all the way down at the bottom for
Vote for
AV's Best, and you can vote for us for AV's Best Real Estate Team under the Real
I've been
Estate
voting
tab.
every day, so
Me
there's at
too.
least
Yep.
12
Yes.
votes in our pile.
Every
Me too.
single day until I think it's March 3rd is the end.
Somewhere around there.
somewhere
Yeah.
in March. Yes.
We're gonna
very
win.
beginning of March. I think it's actually
I
the end of
already-
next week.
Oh, I already did. I
Yeah.
already pictured us winning.
Yeah,
So
this.
when I looked at the
Envision
other
it.
teams, and I'm not trying to be conceited, we're hands down the best and sexiest team on that
We're the
list.
cutest for sure.
Not today, but yes.
the most
Not today.
helpful and kind.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and humble.
I almost said and humble.
And humble.
Well,
I think
We know our worth, Elizabeth. We know our
we
worth.
sure
know
do.
our worth.
we sure do. Rosio and I were like, we're charging 10%.
Good for you.
On a mobile. On a mobile.
In real estate.
Yes, on
Yeah.
a mobile home, not on a resident. No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this has gone too far. It might be my allergy medication, but it's
How many of those did you take?
you?
The air conditioner's not kicking
It's not
on.
kicking on. But,
Somebody turned it off.
thank you for tuning in to our hot mess episode of the buying process. We are going to go over a lot more on our next episode because the buying process is my most favorite. I love selling homes, but helping buyers is my fave. Tune in next time, and we thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.